What can a company do to be ready for these type of things right now?
Well, I think make sure you have processes in place, right? So we're going to use AI for what? What data are we going to feed the AI, right? So are we comfortable feeding that data into the AI? And what do we do when the AI misbehaves, right? So a lot of people don't think about that last part, especially.
Hi, welcome back to Ready or Not, the podcast where we try to figure out if you and your company are ready or not for the future in technology. I personally am not. I'm your host, Nathan Macintosh, and today I'm here with Ben Lorica, former data scientist at O'Reilly and founder of Gradient Flow. And this man tries to figure out and teach companies how to deal with all the data that they get. Hello, Ben.
Glad to be here.
I'm happy that you are here. Can we start here real quick? What does readiness mean for a company when it comes to data collection, security, safety, all of that?
So the basics haven't changed, right? So AI just introduces more data and different types of data. So this is key, right? So before, companies probably were used to data types that were more structured, were more numerical, that lived inside their systems, right? But now you have text, you have video, you have audio. But the basics haven't changed, right? So we need data governance, right? So we need clear guidelines as to who can use what data and when. And that applies, by the way, so data governance, unfortunately for companies, no longer just applies to people, it applies to AI, right? So, because AI is increasingly using data on its own, autonomously inside companies. But the reality is the big data revolution primarily still centered around structured data.
Okay.
So, but AI is really adept at consuming and cleaning and making sense of unstructured data. That's why unstructured data is more real now. So whatever you're doing around security, governance, you need to keep that in mind. And then secondly, the fact that the consumers of your data will now include machines, right? So AI agents. What does that mean, right? So for your data security policies.
Should companies just be dealing with the data they have or continuously trying to just get more and more data?
Focus on the data you have and get that ready for AI in some sense, right? So because AI also depends on data that's well curated, clean, that is easy to digest. And so once you get that in place, you're in a better position to absorb new data.
What do you mean by clean? Again, I don't know what that means, right? For me personally, clean data, dirty data. What does that mean?
The first thing you do might be to standardize your data. And then maybe if there's missing data, make sure that you flag that so that your algorithms know, right? So that this set of data has a lot of missing values and may not be that useful.
Are there any fears with that? Like security type fears with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, not good, but I mean, okay, great. We're great. Why? How so?
Yeah, because a lot of these AI tools, obviously, you need to have guardrails. So what do you put into the tool, and what does the tool produce? So what you put in the tool may contain sensitive information, and you need to make sure that you flag that. And then the AI itself may produce sensitive information that you also need to flag, right? So guardrails are a must, especially for outward-facing AI applications.
So there's a lot of data, right? Data. We need security. Can we trust the way that it is right now? And also, like, what can be done with protocols and that type of thing?
So AI introduces a lot of new problems, right? So for one, so if you have, for example, people are talking a lot about agents these days, right? So think about, if you had a team, let's just say, let's focus the example to people working on data itself. So let's say you had a team originally of 5 people. Now with AI tools, agents, these 5 people are now performing the job of 100 people. So the amount of data pipelines that they're authoring, the data that's moving around in your company just explodes. So you definitely have to have processes in place to check everything, to make sure there's no leakage, to make sure that no private information is going out of the company. That's one. Number two, there's also the users themselves of AI. AI, some companies say, well, we're not worried about AI because we don't really use that much AI yet in our company. But the point is, your workers might be using AI, right? So this is what people are calling shadow AI. And then finally, once you get more advanced, right? So you're now at the point where you're using AI and you realize, hey, this AI could benefit if we train it or tune it using our own data, right? So then now you're in a position where you're fine-tuning or post-training the model using your own company data. And what are your guardrails, right? So how do you know that the employees training or post-training the models are feeding data that has been stripped of all the proprietary information? Because the thing is, you might say, well, it doesn't matter because basically once the model has been tuned to our data, well, the data is not actually available anymore to the model, right? So because the model is just a model. But the point is the model now knows this data, right? So it's something that it will remember. It might accidentally spit it out to an external user, right? So
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's companies who are starting to think about this problems, and they're building tools across all of the problems that I described, right? So
What can a company do to be ready for these type of things right now?
Oh, I think make sure you have processes in place, right? So we're going to use AI for what? What data are we going to feed the AI, right? So are we comfortable feeding that data into the AI? And what do we do when the AI misbehaves, right? So a lot of people don't think about that last part, especially. Just look at a field like cybersecurity, right? So it's a more mature field than AI. So they have processes in place around incidents, right? So what they call incident response. So unfortunately, not as many AI teams have thought through what will we do when things go wrong.
Why wouldn't they think of that? That's all I think about. That's the only thing I think about.
I think part of it is there's pressure to start using AI, and then secondly, I think that there's not a clear definition yet of what do we mean when an AI goes wrong, right? So and who in the company should we have in the table to assess whether the AI is misbehaving, right? So it's not going to be just the engineers, right? So you may have to have your legal team involved as well, right? And then after we're comfortable about defining what a true AI incident is, how do we contain it?
Ben, thank you so much for being here today. I feel that I'm a little bit more ready than I was previously, but the word data has been said a lot of times, and I'm going to have to process that.